Choya sampo pa gyu trashi pa tuche tempe trinle yarngoda pelge drolor zampe tseparache palden lame shabla solvade Oma Guru Vajradhara Suma Timunisha Sane Karm Utta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Suma Timunisha Sane Karm Utta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Suma Timunisha Sane Kar Utta Vardanya Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dagi Jitsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu Su Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo Su Uyon Sunge Nawa Tsedo Su Tsechi Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Visu Lekshu Yila Sambe Dede Malupa Geme Lungi Drupra Chingi Lo Tsoni Sodan Dikdun Shape Tse Dungi namke yin su lekshu ne lapchen tsoni yong su tsopa dang chera nye dun changra chingi lo chanchu pargi nyinsen tukun tu nyu peme siudru lekshu ne chanchu drube gegen kunshi shi tungen de la drubra chingi loba dagi lo na chola chokpa dang chemin samchur ngenpa shiwa dang chedan tumbe dedun malu pa beme lungi drupra chingi lo dorna tengne tsera tamche dan techi pardonek rese kyamne lama kele me tukche chingi dala siksus gongyab drewe nyamda dachala chetsun lame tuje rabgongne kudan sunge nawa drame tu nyamsunyongwe kesan tobrash kewa kundu yanda lama dan drame chiki pela lonch Sada lamge yunte rabzo ne dorje changi koba nyur tobe sho. Pakyuke kudan dagi alu, pakyuke sungdan dagi nga, pakyuke tukdan dagi yi, ten yerme chikto chingi alu. Makyuke kudan dagi lu, makyuke sungdan dagi nga, makyuke tukdan dagi yi, ten yerme chikto lo, Om Muni Muni, Maha Muni, Shakya Muni, Svoha Sashipuki Chushi Meto Ramare Rabalingashi Nide Gempadi Sange Shintu Mikte ulvarki drokunam dashi chapar shoyedam guru radna minral kam niryatayami Sangye chedan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinsu gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye drupare shu Sangye chedan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinsu gibe sonam ki Drola pinchra sange drupar sho sange chedan tsoki chonamla chanchu pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchra sange drupar sho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Buongiorno.
Good morning. I was just wondering where to begin. There's a concept. More than a concept, it's a law of physics that I've spoken about often. It's a key, an important key for me, a key to everything that we do when we talk about what we do in Buddhism. And it's said that wherever there's interaction, inevitably there will be transformation. It's not possible that two entities, two molecules or two people, whatever they are, that they interact between themselves, and it's impossible for them not to transform. And this interaction is never in one direction. When two parts interact, it's reciprocal, it's in both directions. So there's a transformation on both sides. And this brings us to the fact that we are in constant interaction through our five senses, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what we touch. We are interacting also with our own thoughts, with our memories of the past, our projections to the future, our judgments about the present that interact all among themselves. And with all of this, we transform. We are constantly transforming. There are two possible ways of transforming that we call life. One is a transformation with involuntary and lacking awareness, where I interact in a way It's more like a reaction to what happens. And so my choices, my words, my thoughts, they're not something that I choose. I'm not choosing the direction for these. Instead, I let life, when I say life, I mean the various situations that we live. We allow these situations that we live, where we react, we let these situations give us the direction. It's clear, isn't it? And so this is one way where I don't have the reins in my hands, of my life in my hands, and I let myself be taken. And the other way is where one sets one's objective, a direction, and one tries to interact, to go to that direction. It doesn't mean that one will always meet one's own expectations in time and in how it's done, but the choice is made with awareness. We can even say it's almost like a manipulating way. I try to use reality, the situations that I live, to direct myself towards where I want to go. These are two characteristics that are quite important. As human beings, we have this ability. This is a very particular ability, described as one of the characteristics that distinguishes us the most from other animals, remembering that we are always animals, we're still animals. This ability to look at our past and to project ourselves towards the future. We can imagine ourselves in the future. I remember once this doctor in a conference, he gave this example, and he said, let's imagine a zebra that's in the savannah, grazing peacefully. At a certain point, the lion comes, the female lion, because it's the female lion that hunts. What happens to the zebra? The heart rate goes to 1,000, starts running. The lioness, she starts running after, and the zebra is able to get away. Maybe there's a gazelle somewhere else, and so, or maybe the lioness, she gets tired and she lets the zebra get away. The zebra needs only 5 minutes to go back to grazing peacefully, for the heart rate to go back normally, to get out of that flight mode, and then maybe another lioness comes, and then the zebra will run away again. But what would happen if we were at the place of the zebra? So the lioness is no longer there. Would we go back to where we were before? No, we would probably keep running for as long as possible. Maybe at the end of the day we get home, and then we tell everyone in the family what happened. We talk about, then we try to create safe zones where we can graze without lions, or and at night we dream about what happened. And anytime we see a little bit of yellow, we get scared, and our blood starts to boil, and our heart rate starts beating very, very fast. And of course we will make sure that none of our children can graze in that area. And even though the lions aren't there anymore, but night and day we're just imagining the fear of the lions. So we have these characteristics, which on one side is marvelous, because everything that we've been able to do as a species, the most important things, the most special things, we can say, come, in my opinion, come from this ability to imagine before acting. Before acting, we need to imagine it. And this marvelous ability to take what we've learned from the past, add them up to other people's experiences, and then direct them to the future, and then do what we need to do to realize those things. If we look at sectors, I mean, what we do, I'm sorry, looking over the centuries, what we do is we add up experience as we learn. I think this is very special. It's one of our most powerful abilities, this ability to imagine and believe in a dream. Because when we imagine something towards our future, it's something that doesn't exist. It's something that is nothing other than our own imagination, based on past experiences, but it's our imagination. But at the same time, it's the most powerful thing that exists, this ability to dream. It's what allows us to go towards a dream, to transform our reality. Something that Lama Michel Rinpoche taught me is the importance of believing in the impossible so that it becomes possible. And this applied to many things. So, in our life, we can live using this ability to look at our past, to project our future, imagine our future, direct ourselves to the future with awareness or without. Because when this marvelous capacity that we have, when it's used badly, what happens? We re-suffer and we pre-suffer instead of relaxing a little bit. I don't know. Have you ever pre-suffered your future? Is there anyone here who has never done that? I don't think so. And if we looked at ourselves and we asked ourselves, our suffering, is it more mental or physical? In your opinion? It's more mental, isn't it? And let's divide this mental suffering into two categories: past and future, and present. So the suffering comes mostly from what happened in the past, what could happen in the future, or what's actually happening in the present. Our past and our present. Our past and our future. We spend most of our life worrying about what doesn't exist, because what is the past? What is there today of the past? What remains today of the past? I think many of you have read Orwell's 1984. I remember, I read it when I was in India. It was a month where I had I had debate exams. I don't know why I picked up this book, but I really enjoyed it. I really liked this book. I read it in English. And there was a moment in the book where there was the lying minister, and his job was to rewrite history. Because clearly he said, the past today is nothing other than what you remember it to be. Because it's a little bit like what's said when there's someone who's lived a trauma, and talks, if you go to talk to that person trying to help, it's not that important, from what I've understood, what actually happened. I mean, if we can say that actually exists at all. But what's more important is how that person lived that experience. Because I could have lived an experience completely differently from you. But at the end of the day, that's the mark that it left on me. I lived it in that way. So what is the past? Today, what remains of the past? Memory. Emotions. That there's also a past, let's say, the person that has been transformed from the past, who brings those signs. So that situation is no longer there. Instead, what is the future? Our projections. The definition of past, present, and future in a Buddhist philosophical test, the past is the causes that have already had conditions and have already given the result. Present are the causes that are meeting conditions and giving their fruit. And the future are causes that have not yet met the conditions to give the results. In other words, the past are the seeds that have already germinated and given fruit. The present is are the seeds that are germinating, and the future are the seeds that have yet to germinate and give fruit. But on a subjective level, from our own experience, the past, present, and the future have to do with our thoughts, and how much of our life do we occupy with something that will never come, or something that is no longer that. If I pre-suffer for something that won't happen, I've suffered for nothing. So our mind is if we look at our senses, the ones we interact with, we started with the principle that wherever there's interaction, there's transformation. And the stronger the interaction, the stronger the transformation. Among our 6 senses, because there is the sense of the mind, which one do we interact with the most? Is it our sight? Is it our hearing? Is it touch? Is it our smell? Or are there mental images? It's our mind. The mental, our thoughts, like mental images. So if an interaction brings transformation and we're able to transform ourselves with awareness, or even without being aware, this brings us to the question, what we want. What do I want? At the end of the day, what is Buddhism? Today is a day to introduce Buddhism. It's a tool to help us transform ourselves with awareness, to act with awareness, to transform ourselves in a certain direction. That's what it is. But the first thing we need to understand is the direction we want to go, because sometimes we get close to Buddhism and the importance becomes being Buddhist, or to feel good. Sometimes it's important to create relationships with someone where one feels protected and loved. And these are all tools. if the, the most important thing in Tibetan Buddhism is the relationship with our spiritual guide. In the end, is a tool. Dharma is a tool. The teachings, the holy places, these are all tools. But the tool becomes special when it has a clear function, when we use it for a certain direction. So I often go back to this starting point. One, because if you've never thought about this, it's important to think about it. And if you have thought about it in the past, it's important to think about it again and again and again. So we start here from the beginning. Where do I want to go? How do I want to transform myself? Because in life we're born, there's our childhood, we learn many things, and I'm very sure that those early formative years are the first 7, 9 years of life. Some say even the first 6 months. So the first 3 months, the first 9 months, and up to the 6 years. Some people say 7 or 9. Different views, but we learn much, much more the first years of our lives, much more at nursery school than we do at university. And it's fundamental for me to clarify, when I say learn, there are different levels of learning. When we talk about learning, normally we talk about this acquisition of knowledge and cognitive tools, ability to judge, to reason. It's our ability, we can say like as data elaborators. And there's another part of learning that is extremely important, which has to do with our world view. If I have trust, if I don't have trust, how I react to certain situations, if I feel secure, if I don't feel safe. Many, many aspects. And this emotional part, the part of our worldview from so many parts, where does that come from? That comes from those first years of life, and we bring that with us for a long time. It can also change, but it's not that obvious. If I remember well, I don't remember who said it. I could be wrong, but maybe it was the founder of the Salesiani. And it said, give me your child before 7 years old, and I will make him into the person that he will become. But I think most of us are already older. But in our lifetime, we're born, we have our childhood, where we learn, we're educated in the context in which we grow up. And I don't know how often there's this awareness of giving the direction to our life. One doesn't learn from a conceptual point of view, but from an experiential point of view when we're young. And the greatest responsibility of parents is that they should be really the examples of what they want their children to become. That's another topic. And what happens? So our childhood goes on, we go to school, we're shaped to fit into the society in which we live. For example, why at school do we stay seated at a desk, closed in a room for so many hours? Normally,
seduto su
how
una
many
sedia,
hours
chiuso in una stanza a
does a
scuola?
child have to
8 ore
stay
al giorno circa,
seated at a desk
più o meno, no?
in a room? About 8 hours a
Perché
day.
si fa così?
Why?
Perché se non si facesse
Because
così,
if we
non si
didn't do
riuscirebbe
like this,
mai ad avere un adulto che riesce a
it
stare
would
8
be
ore chiuso in una
impossible
stanza dopo.
to then
Non si riuscirebbe
shape
mai.
that child into being an adult
Tu prendi
that
un
could stay
bambino
eight
che è
hours in an
cresciuto
office.
nel
Take a
campo,
child that grew up in the
lo metti
working
chiuso in
the
una stanza
fields and
per 8 ore seduto,
close him up
dopo 2 giorni ti
for
manda a
eight
dormire,
hours a
dice no, io
day.
non ce la
After
faccio, è
a
impossibile.
couple days, he would
Noi siamo
absolutely
fatti di
renounce to
abitudini
the whole
e
experience.
quindi finisce
So we're
una
made up
certa
of these
parte
habits.
dell'infanzia,
So
andiamo
after
alla scuola
childhood, we go to school,
in un modo, dico giustamente,
and
veniamo
and
modellati per la
I
società
say
nella quale noi
rightly
viviamo
so.
perché
We're
viviamo in
shaped
una
to the
società, abbiamo
society,
bisogno di
to the needs of
lavorare perché
society,
abbiamo
where
bisogno di mangiare, di
we need
pagare
to
le nostre
work
conti, di
because
sopravvivere, è
we need to
normale, la
survive.
sopravvivenza è la prima cosa che
The
viene
first thing
fuori.
is
Noi viviamo in
survival.
una
We need to
società che
live,
ha
we need to
certe
eat.
regole
Our
e certi
society has
sistemi, quindi
certain
dobbiamo
rules,
adattarci
and we
e
need to
funzionare bene
adapt.
dentro questa
You need to
società,
adapt
perché se
ourselves and
cerchiamo di
work well
crescere
within the
qualcuno
society.
in un modo
If
che riteniamo molto sano, ma che
we we
assolutamente
try to raise
non ha a che
someone
fare
that
con la
we think
società in cui
is a
quella
very
persona deve
healthy
vivere, dopo ci sono
way,
tanti altri problemi che
in a
vengono
healthy
fuorianti,
way, but then that person is completely
E quindi io non è che sto dicendo che è una
incapable of
critica
fitting
questa,
into
sto dicendo
society,
che ci
that would
possono essere
create
aspetti
many
positivi di
problems
questo.
too.
Comunque
So
sia,
this is not a criticism.
per la
There are
maggioranza di
positive
noi quella
effects,
fase è passata.
positive sides too, aspects
Finita la
too.
scuola,
After school,
cominciamo, no?
we begin,
Finiamo verso finire le medie,
you know,
eccetera, uno comincia
after
a chiedersi cosa vuoi fare.
maybe towards the junior high school,
Questo,
we ask ourselves what we want to do with our
secondo me,
lives.
è un peso
And
enorme,
this is an enormous weight
perché,
because
apro e chiudo una parentesi,
just as a side note,
una volta qualcuno mi spiegò
once someone
che una delle
explained
cose
to
che
me
genera
that
stress
something that
nell'essere umano
generates stress
è prendere decisioni.
in human beings is making decisions.
Ogni volta che ci troviamo a
Every
dover
time
prendere una
where
decisione,
we need to make a
c'è della
decision,
tensione coinvolta.
there's tension.
No? E qua ritorniamo alla cosa che abbiamo detto all'inizio,
Then
proiettiamo il futuro, ma sarà giusta
w-
questa decisione,
what we
ma andrà
were
bene, ma
saying
non andrà
before,
bene, ma magari
projecting
c'è
in the
un'altra che è
future,
meglio,
is this the
eccetera,
right
eccetera.
decision?
Quando
Is
c'è una
this the right
decisione da
way to
prendere, c'è un
go?
momento
So
di una
when
certa
there's a
tensione,
decision
no?
to make, there's some tension.
E viviamo in un
We
contesto dove
live in a
ci
context
vengono date tante
where
decisioni da prendere,
many decisions
tantissime.
are
Mi
left
sembra
up
che
to
più andiamo
us.
avanti, più
And it
viene fatto in questo
seems
modo.
like as we go forward, we
Perché
have more and
non so, io
more
almeno quando ero
decisions to
bambino non
make.
mi ricordo che qualcuno mi chiedesse diverse cose
When
che
I
vedo
was a
oggi sui
child, I
bambini
don't
piccoli.
remember being
E quello è un
asked
altro discorso.
being asked certain things that now are asked
E
to
quindi quello
small
che succede è
children.
che ci viene
But that's
chiesto a
another
un certo
topic.
punto, ma tu cosa vuoi
So
fare
at a
dopo
certain point in our
adulto?
life, we're asked, what do
Io
you
mi
want
ricordo
to
quando
do
avevo
with your
intorno agli
life?
11
I
anni che mi
remember I was
chiedevano, ma
about
tu cosa
11
vuoi
years
fare
old.
da
People were
grande?
asking me, what do you want to do when you
Io
grow
fra
up?
me
And
pensavo, che domanda
between
assurda.
me and me, I was thinking, what a crazy
Poi davo una
question.
risposta qualunque.
And so I would just give any kind of answer.
Che ne so io cosa
What
voglio
do
fare da
I
grande?
know?
E mi
What do I
ricordo che
know what I want to
io la
be when
risposta
I
che
grow
avevo
up?
dato
And I
per
remember
dare una risposta che
to
almeno
give an
facevo felice chi
answer,
me lo
just
chiedeva.
to make those people happy, those who were asking,
Dicevo, voglio
I would say,
lavorare nell'azienda di famiglia
I want to work in my
e voglio
family
fare il pilota
business,
di caccia
and
aereo.
I want to be a jet
Queste erano le
fighter.
due cose. Io e mio
These were
cugino
the
avevamo
two
trovato
things.
quella risposta lì.
My
No?
cousin and me, we found those
Però
two answers.
ci troviamo a un certo punto in quella
So
fase,
at a certain
alcuni
point,
di
we're in
noi
that
facciamo
phase.
delle scelte basate
Some
su delle
of
passioni,
us make choices
altri
based on passion.
prendiamo una strada sulla base
Others,
delle condizioni
we
di quelli
may
che
take a
c'erano,
road
magari a uno ha
based
una
on the
passione,
conditions
però
that we have.
quello che permette di
That
sopravvivere più facilmente è
maybe what
l'azienda
would
di famiglia
maybe
piuttosto che il lavoro che c'è
maybe what
vicino,
that
le
would allow
opportunità che
what
ci
would
sono.
allow
E così
the
va.
best survival would be the
Poi a un
family
certo punto
company, the
uno
family
prende delle
business.
responsabilità,
At a
c'è
certain
chi si
point,
sposa, c'è chi
one
non si
takes on other
sposa, i figli,
responsibilities,
la
those who get
casa,
married,
la
have
macchina, le
children,
tasse,
on
le
the
vacanze
house and the cars and the
e la
taxes,
vita
vacations, and
va avanti,
life just goes on.
nulla contro.
Nothing against.
Però noi viviamo
But
gran
we
parte della
live
nostra vita
most of our life
in un processo costante
in
di
a
formazione,
constant process
di
of formation,
trasformazione,
of
non
transformation
consapevole.
without
Non so se
awareness.
siete d'accordo.
I don't know if you agree or not.
Ok? Se non del tutto, almeno in
Eh,
parte,
If not everything, at least
è
a
importante
part,
prendere le redine nelle nostre mani.
it's important to take the
Però per fare
our
questo
reins in our
dobbiamo
own
utilizzare
hands.
quella capacità
But
che
to
abbiamo,
do
che è
that,
quella
we
di
need to
immaginare,
use this
di
ability that we have,
proiettarci nel
which
futuro.
is to imagine, to project ourselves into
Quindi
the future.
io vi invito a fare
So
un
I
esercizio.
invite you to do this exercise.
Un esercizio che
It's an
da un lato è molto
exercise
semplice,
that
da
on
un
one
altro lato non
hand
è
is
così
very
facile e semplice,
simple, but not that
che è quello
easy.
di permettersi di immaginare
Allow yourselves to imagine
essere la versione migliore di se stessi.
the best version of
Chi
yourself.
voglio essere?
Allow yourself to imagine
Come voglio essere?
how you want to be, who you want to be. Imagine the best version of yourself.
Perché nell'insieme di questo
Because together with this,
c'è un altro aspetto
there's
che si va a
another
sommare
aspect that adds
brevemente,
up to this just very quickly,
ed è
which is
noi siamo abituati a
we're
vivere in un
used
contesto
to living in a
in cui
context
cresciamo e
where
viviamo
we
e anche,
grow up
anche
and where
abbiamo
we
delle
live,
impronte abbastanza
and we
forti
have really strong
che ci
imprints
portano
that
a
bring us
vedere come se noi fossimo una vittima del mondo.
that bring us to feel like we're a victim of the world.
In altre parole,
In other words,
quando stiamo bene
when
o
we're
quando stiamo
well
male,
or when we're
di
not well,
solito la colpa a
normally
chi diamo? La ragione di questo nostro stato
the
interno?
the reason
Qualcosa
for
che accade
this is something that
fuori, o
ha-
no?
happens
Di solito è
outside,
così.
and it's usually like this.
Poco tempo fa ho sentito un
So,
termine che mi è
short
piaciuto,
time ago, I heard a
che
term that I
parlava di
liked.
ambiente
It
interno
talked
e
about
ambiente esterno,
inner environments and external
dove
environments,
questo nel
where,
contesto
and
dell'epigenetica,
this was in the context of
questa
epigenetics.
dottoressa che
This
stava dicendo
doctor
che
was
noi
saying
costantemente
that
trasformiamo noi stessi a livello
we're
genetico
constantly
del DNA,
transforming
e
ourselves
quello che fa i
um,
cambiamenti a livello
on a
genetico
genetic
è
level,
uno
not our
l'ambiente
DNA,
esterno,
and
due l'ambiente interno.
the
L'ambiente esterno
external
sono le persone
environment,
che
so the
incontriamo,
people
le
that we meet,
situazioni
the
che viviamo, i
situations that
luoghi
we
dove
meet, the
andiamo,
places we
gli
go,
oggetti dei
the
cinque sensi con cui
objects of our
interagiamo.
five senses that we interact with is our
L'ambiente interno
external
sono principalmente
environment.
le
And
nostre
there's
emozioni, i
also our
nostri stati
inner
interni, la nostra
environment,
realtà
our subjective
soggettiva, come
reality,
noi
our
interiormente viviamo
emotions,
l'ambiente
how
esterno.
we internally live the
Questa dottoressa
external.
diceva,
And this doctor was
quello che ha il
saying
più
that
grande potere
of
e
these
forza di
two environments, the one
trasformazione
that has the
del nostro
greatest power
DNA
of
è l'ambiente
transformation over our
interno,
DNA
molto
is
di più che
our
l'ambiente
inner
esterno.
environment, much
Domanda:
greater than the external environment.
l'ambiente
So
interno è
here's
un
a
risultato
question.
dell'ambiente esterno o
Is
l'ambiente
the
esterno è un
inner
risultato
environment a
dell'ambiente
result
interno
of
o non
the
hanno nulla a che fare l'uno con
external
l'altro?
environment, or is the external environment a result of
O nessuno dei tre?
the inner environment?
Partiamo dal primo.
Or do they have
L'ambiente
nothing to
interno è
do
un
with each
risultato
other?
dell'ambiente esterno?
Is the inner environment a result of the external environment?
Noi di solito lo viviamo così.
Normally we
Perché se io
live
sto
it like
camminando per
this. If
strada e
I'm
qualcuno mi
walking down the
insulta,
road and someone insults me,
rimango male.
I'm upset
O
about
no?
that, right?
Se sto in una certa
If
situazione
I'm
e
in
una
a certain
persona mi tratta con
situation and someone
aggressività,
treats me with
c'è
aggression,
un'emozione interna che
there's an
reagisce
inner
dinanzi a questo. Quindi
emotion
il nostro
that
ambiente
is
interno è un
activated. So
risultato dell'interazione
our
con
inner
l'ambiente esterno?
environment is
Sì,
is
diciamo di sì.
is heavily influenced by this external
L'ambiente
environment.
esterno
Yes,
dipende dall'ambiente
but
interno o è
does
una cosa totalmente
does
autonoma?
the external environment depend on the inner environment, or is it completely autonomous,
Nessuno di noi
disconnected? None
è
of us
capace
is
di
able
vivere
to live
assolutamente nulla
anything,
indipendentemente da se stesso.
anything from himself.
Facciamo un esempio qualunque.
Let's just give you any example.
Uso l'esempio che ho fatto anche mercoledì scorso.
I'll use the example I gave last
Nella
Wednesday.
stessa medico che
The
sentivo parlare, questa era
same,
un'altra persona che sentivo parlare fece un esempio che
another person I
per
heard
me è molto chiaro
speaking
in questo
gave a
senso.
very clear example.
Parlava di una
He was
persona,
talking about
una coppia,
someone, it was a
che sono venuti da
couple,
questa
who went to this doctor for therapy, and at a certain point, I don't remember whether it was the husband or the wife, said, that the other gets incredibly angry with me for very, very simple things. This is one of our problems. And the doctor asked more information and tried to get to the bottom of it. And she said, for example, I, and then the doctor, she said, I realize that you get angry for what we call micro abandonments. For example, you don't notify if you're going to be late for dinner or if you're not going to come. So, for most people, it would, not be a problem at all if I was waiting you for lunch and then you didn't come or you came late. That's okay. But it wouldn't warrant an explosion of anger. And the doctor said, actually, she asked to the person who gets so angry, the person who would get angry, she asked him or her that if he had problems of abandonment, and actually that was true from one of the parents. And so when one lives a situation of, let's say, strong abandonment, there's an inner feeling, there's a wound, there's pain for having been abandoned. So when I live these micro abandonments, do I live it completely independently from my past? When I live my present, I'm influenced my past. So I live this present moment through these filters of all the levels of layers of myself. So something that I lived as extremely painful and heavy and let's say that I have a hypersensitivity to things that maybe someone else would not be at all touched by. I'm not saying that nothing happened. I'm just saying the way I live that experience, it comes from my being. So this external reality is not something independent and autonomous. It's disconnected from our inner environment. None of us is able to perceive or live anything outside independently from this inner filter. I see it like this. Like this, like this symbol, this circle where you have two arrows that connect, one that goes above and one left. So what happens in my inner environment determines what happens on an external level, and what happens on the external also influences and determines what happens inside. They're directly linked. If we were to give more importance to one or the other, in my opinion, what has more power in this phase of our life is our inner reality, internal reality. So this inner environment is not the result of the external environment. It's actually the opposite. We are constantly creating the reality in which we live. And with this, I'm not saying that there is no external reality, that view that everything is a great illusion. You can think what you want. No, I'm not saying this at all. I'm saying that none of us is able to experience anything independently from himself, his own past, his own physical state of being, his own emotions. Because
se i miei
even
ormoni
there,
sono sopra sotto, cambia la
you know,
percezione della
if our
realtà.
hormones are all turned around, that
Sì.
changes our perception of the
Basta
world.
vedere se uno ha la
Just
febbre
see if it just when you
piuttosto
have a
che
high fever, for
ha
example,
mangiato
or
troppo,
if
cambia la percezione,
if you've eaten
il
too
modo di
much,
vivere le situazioni.
the way of living situations
Quindi
changes.
la nostra realtà
So
interna, il
our
nostro
inner
ambiente
reality,
interno,
our
è uno dei punti
the
più
inner reality
importanti.
is one of the most important points.
Solo che
It's just that
noi siamo abituati
we're
a vivere
used to living
in un contesto dove
in a
non viene data
context
tanta
where
importanza
it's not
all'ambiente interno,
where our inner
dove
environment is
l'ambiente
not given
interno viene
importance.
costantemente portato a
Our
noi
inner environment
come un
is
qualcosa che
constantly
o non viene proprio
um,
visto,
i- given to us as something that
o
that
viene
is
visto
not
come il
seen,
risultato
or
dell'ambiente esterno.
as a result of the outer
E quindi per cambiare
environment.
l'ambiente
And so to
interno,
change our inner
di solito cosa
environment,
cerchiamo di fare?
normally what do we try to do?
Cambiare
We try to
quello
change
esterno.
our external environment.
Non so se vi è mai
I
capitato
don't
di
know
vivere una brutta
it's
situazione che non
ever
vi piaceva,
happened that you've
dove
lived a
c'era una
negative
dinamica
experience
difficile,
where there's a
e
difficult
fare di tutto per
dynamic.
cambiare
You
quella
do
situazione e
everything
riuscirci.
possible to change that
E quando uno non si è neanche accorto,
dynamics, and
si è
you
ricreato.
manage,
Vabbè,
and then before you realize it, it has
nomi
been
diversi, un colore
recreated
diverso, una
with
forma diversa.
it's a different film, but the plot is the same.
Come
Different
mi vengono due
names,
esempi
different
di persone,
places.
uno
Mm,
che viene da me e mi disse una
It's
volta,
happened
qualcuno viene e
that
mi disse,
someone
Lama,
came
mi
to me
trovo
and
in
said,
questa
Lama, I'm
situazione
in
di
this
difficoltà nel mio
situation
lavoro col mio
that
socio.
is really
Io
difficult.
conoscevo le due persone bene,
I'm
dico,
having a
ok,
difficult time at
spiegami
work
meglio.
with my
Poche
um,
parole, la persona diceva, no, io mi sento che il
um,
mio socio non mi
uh,
rispetta, non vede la mia parte
I'm
del
having
lavoro,
difficulties at work.
eccetera,
I don't
eccetera.
feel like I'm being
Dico, ok,
respected.
ti sei mai
And I
sentito
asked this
così
person,
prima?
did you ever have these feelings
Da quando
before?
memoria di
And
esistere.
this person answered, I feel like this
Negli
since
altri lavori
as
nessuno mi ha
long
mai
as I
visto
can
rispettandolo, mio
remember,
marito non mi vedeva e
um,
rispettava, i miei
since as long
figli
as I
mi
can
vedono e non mi
remember,
rispettano,
my
i miei genitori
husband,
non mi hanno mai
my
visto e
my
rispettato,
parents
eccetera,
never
eccetera, eccetera.
respected me. My husband
Quindi
doesn't
che cosa
respect
c'è
me.
in
My
comune fra tutte
children doesn't
queste?
respect me.
Chiedo. Che
So
nessuno mi ha mai
the
rispettato.
common denominator here is the person not feeling
Questo mi fa
respected.
ricordare una battuta
So
molto
this
brutta
reminds me of
che mi
a
raccontavano
joke
tanti anni fa.
that I heard
Questa è una
many
coppia
years ago. It's a
dove
couple where
viene il marito va alla moglie
the husband goes to the
dice,
wife and says,
sai,
you know,
quando eravamo giovani ci
when we
siamo
were
messi
young,
insieme
we
e
got
poi è successo
together,
questo e
and
quell'altro
then
e
this
abbiamo perso
happened,
tutto
that
quello che
happened, we
avevamo, ti
lost
ricordi?
everything that
Sì,
we
e tu
had.
eri
You
sempre
remember
lì
that?
con noi, sì.
Yes, but you were
Poi c'è
always by
stata la
my
guerra,
side. And
siamo
then there was the
dovuti
war, and
scappare
we were
e
able
tu
to
eri lì con
get
me e
away, and
dici
you were
sì,
there with
che
me.
bello.
Yes, it's
E poi mi
true.
sono
And
ammalato
then
e
I
tu eri
got
sempre lì a
sick,
mio
and you were
fianco,
always
sì,
by
è
my
vero.
side.
E
It's
poi ho
true,
perso
yes.
tutto
Then
perché non
I
so di
lost
qua, di là e tu eri
everything
sempre al mio
again, and there
fianco.
you
E
are,
lei
always
dice
at my
sì, è vero,
side.
ma
Yes, it's
quanta
true.
sfortuna
And
porti.
the husband says,
Dico,
but how much bad luck do you bring me?
ok? Quello che accade,
What happens is
quello che accade è che noi certe volte è così
sometimes
chiara la
it's
cosa
the thing, it's
e
so
comunque sia non
clear,
riusciamo a vederla.
but anyway, we still don't
In
see
questo
it.
caso non sono d'accordo con la visione del marito, però
I don't agree with the view of the
ehm,
husband here, but
noi ripetiamo delle
we
dinamiche
repeat dynamics
e non ci accorgiamo che
and
in
we don't
realtà noi ci vediamo con
realize.
tutto. E questo si va a collegare con
And this
quella battuta che ho
connects with
raccontato tante volte che
the
facevo
joke,
quando ero molto piccolo, intorno
that
ai
I
5-6
used
anni.
to say when I was
E
about
andavo dagli adulti
5 or 6
e gli
years
facevo
old,
la
and I would go
battuta,
to
ovunque mi
adults
tocco
and I
mi fa
say,
male,
wherever I touch
mi
myself,
tocco la spalla fa
it
male, mi
hurts. I
tocco il
touch my
naso fa
back, it
male,
hurts. I
mi
touch my
tocco la
nose,
testa
it
fa
hurts. I
male,
touch
mi
my
tocco
head,
il
it
petto
hurts.
fa
I
male, mi
touch my
tocco il
chest,
ginocchio
it
fa
hurts. I
male.
touch
Che
my knee, and
malattia
it
ho?
hurts. What is my sickness?
Male al dito.
I have I have pain in my finger.
Ok? Quello che succede è che
What
noi
happens is
continuiamo a
we
dire che le
keep
certe situazioni
saying
fanno
that
male, che non vanno bene,
certain
eccetera, eccetera. Io non sto
situations are
togliendo
difficult,
nulla
and I'm not
all'ambiente esterno, che
taking
ha
anything
un'influenza.
away from the external
Però quando
environment.
noi
It
vediamo
has
che
an
le situazioni si
influence. But when
ripetono,
we see that the situations repeat
vuol dire che
themselves
c'è un
again and
componente
again,
interno
that it means that there's an inner component
non indifferente
an important inner component, because there's also something else that I started seeing it just a short time ago. I'll try to explain it.
Faccio un piccolo giro.
Let me just take another turn.
Qual è la funzione del dolore?
What's the function of pain?
La sopravvivenza, in ultima
Survival.
La funzione del dolore è
The
farci
function of
capire che c'è
pain is
qualcosa che non va.
to show us that
Ok?
something is
Quindi quanto è
wrong.
importante il dolore?
So how important is pain?
Tanto.
Extremely important.
No? Io sempre che parlo di questo mi ricordo
And
quelle scene
when
di
I
questo documentario
when
che
I
ho
talk
visto
about this, I always remember
di
this
bambini
scene,
che sono nati
this
con questa
documentary
malattia che non
that
hanno
I saw
assolutamente nessun tipo
of
di
these
dolore.
children born
Questi bambini con 8 anni, quelli che erano tutti
who are
rotti,
not able to feel pain,
totalmente
and
distrutti, di solito hanno una vita molto breve.
normally they have very short lives
Perché metti la mano sul
because
fuoco, guarda che carino
you
esce
know,
il fumo.
you put your hand over a flame and say, oh, this is so cool,
Se
look, the
noi,
smoke
se
is
non fosse
coming out.
spiacevole la
I mean,
fame,
if
non fosse
hunger
piacevole mangiare,
if hunger wasn't
mangeremmo mai?
unpleasant and if food wasn't pleasurable, would we ever eat? No.
Quindi quello che accade è che il
So
dolore è
pain
un
is
allarme che dice
an
guarda
alarm
che
that
c'è
says
qualcosa
there's
che non va
something
in
that
te.
is not well within,
C'è qualcosa che stai facendo
that
che
you're
va
doing
contro la tua
something that
sopravvivenza.
is going against
Il
your
dolore
own
ha
survival.
una
So
sua
pain has a function.
E di solito quello che
And
accade è che
normally
per
what
non
happens,
avere il dolore
to not
dobbiamo
have
vivere in un modo
pain,
equilibrato.
we
Più c'è
need
armonia,
to
più
live in a
c'è
balanced
equilibrio,
way. The more balance, the
meglio
more
uno sta.
harmony, then
A livello fisico,
the better
a
one
livello
is
mentale.
on a physical level, on a mental
Così
level.
come c'è il dolore
And
fisico,
just like
abbiamo
there's
anche il
physical
dolore
pain, there's also
mentale.
mental pain.
E qui però c'è un qualcosa di
But
un po'
there's
diverso.
something a little different here.
Però ritorno all'esempio
But let
precedente.
me go back to the earlier
Che cosa
example.
succede se io
What
ho un problema al
happens
fegato,
if
che è
I have a
qualcosa
problem
qualunque, io non sono
with
medico,
my
sono una delle
liver?
persone più
I'm
preparate
not
di
a
questo.
doctor. I'm the worst
Matteo, c'ho un problema al
one to talk
fegato, per
about
dire,
this.
e mi dà un certo sintomo, mi
So
viene un mal di testa.
let's say I have a headache
Io cosa faccio?
from
Prendo
the
la
pain I
pastiglia
have
per
in
il
my
mal di testa
from my
e non guardo più.
liver, and I just take something
E a
for
un
my
certo punto
headache
io
without
non c'ho più il mal
considering
di
my
testa.
liver. And at a
A un
certain
certo
point, I don't
punto
have a
cosa
headache
succede? Vado
anymore,
avanti,
and I go on and I
mi
go
sorgono
on,
altri
and then
sintomi.
other symptoms will come out.
È come se il mio corpo mi
As
stesse
if
dicendo
my
guarda che qua
body
c'è
were
qualcosa
there
che non va e
saying,
se tu non mi
there's
ascolti da qui ti
something
cerco di
wrong
farti
here.
ascoltare di là.
I need you to listen to
E
me.
continua a manifestare
And
sintomi diversi finché a un certo
different
punto io
symptoms
vado a
come
prendere
out,
cura veramente del problema.
more and more
Ok?
symptoms until I actually take care of the
Io ho la
real problem.
sensazione, non è una
I
cosa che
have
dico sulla base
this
di una
feeling.
conoscenza più profonda
It's not a
piuttosto che è una
deeper
mia
understanding that
percezione.
I have. It's merely a
Che a livello
perception.
emozionale,
I think that
mentale,
on an
quello che accade è il
emotional,
seguente.
mental level, what happens is the
Quando noi
following.
abbiamo qualcosa
When we have
come una
something
ferita,
like a wound,
qualcosa che
something
non sta bene
that's not
dentro di noi,
not well
in
within,
modo inconscio noi continuiamo a
we,
creare
without
situazioni
realizing it,
perché
we
quella
create
ferita venga a
situations
galla.
so that that
Perché
wound
unicamente quando viene a
can
galla che noi la
can
possiamo
come
effettivamente
out, can come
affrontare. Ogni
can
volta che quella ferita viene a
can
galla è
can come
un'opportunità per
can come
guarirla
out,
o per
so that we can
rinforzarla,
either
per
reinforce that
aumentarla.
wound or heal that wound.
Quindi incredibile come si
It's
vede.
incredible.
È come se noi
It's
cercassimo
as
le
if we
situazioni
try
che
to
ci fanno
find
soffrire.
situations sometimes that are painful.
Ma perché io continuo a
Why do I
creare
keep creating
situazioni?
situations?
Perché uno dice
Say yes.
nessuno mi vuole bene, tutti mi abbandonano.
Nobody
È
loves
vero
me.
che io c'ho
Everyone
il senso
abandons
di essere
me, and
abbandonato, però guarda,
I have this feeling of
quella
abandonment. But
persona
look
lì
around.
effettivamente
This
mi ha fatto
person
così e guarda che
did
l'altro mi
this,
ha
and
fatto il
that
contrario,
person
eccetera,
acted
eccetera.
like in this
Però è come
way,
se noi
as
andassimo
if we
incoscientemente a cercare e a creare
subconsciously we were
situazioni
looking for
per
creating
far venire a galla
situations
quello che non
to
va, quello che i conflitti che ci sono, le
to
ferite
bring those
profonde che ci
wounds
sono
and those
dentro di noi.
unresolved conflicts, to bring them
Ed è come se
afloat,
il nostro essere
as
stesse
if
dicendo a noi stessi
our being
guarda che
was
prenditi cura di
saying,
questo, guarda qua che non va,
take
ok, non
care
l'hai
of
capito,
this.
proviamo ancora.
Okay, you haven't understood. Let's try again here.
A me mi è capitato
It's happened to
di
me
vivere una
to
situazione che non
live
mi piaceva,
a
fare di tutto per
situation that
cambiarla,
I
riuscire
didn't like. I was able to change the situation, and then soon after, and I turn the corner and I find myself in that same situation. I try to turn it around again. I'm able, and then I'm face to face again with that situation until I said to myself, I'm the one. I'm the one who needs to change the way I relate to the situation. And I realize that when I'm in a situation that I am not living well, beyond the so-called physical, quote unquote, objective reality, there's my own subjective reality that speaks even louder. So if I'm living a situation badly, it's because that situation resounds something inside that is not um, that it is that is not fixed, let's say. And of course, there are negative situations of abuse, and um, um, I'm not saying that no one uh, no one suffers the abuse of someone else. No, I'm saying that the way we live reality is a reflection of what we have inside, and it's up to us to take care of ourselves. No one else can do it for us. Now, there's some levels where people can take care of us, where and there are other levels where only ourselves can take that only we can take care of ourselves. One way to describe the objective that Buddhism sets forth is a life's path that takes us to a state of health on a mental and physical level. And not only with ourselves, but also in our relations with others. This is one of the most important aspects of Buddhism. But to go towards a state of health, we need to be able to imagine that state of health. Because if I go to the doctor and I don't believe that I can, if I can get well, or worse even, I don't even think that I'm sick, I'll never change my lifestyle. I'll never do the treatments or take the medicine to get better, because either I don't believe that I'm sick, or I don't believe that I have the ability um, to be cured. So first of all, we need to admit that realize that we're sick, believe that we can get well, and follow the treatment. I mean, it's also happened that it can happen that it's pleasurable to be sick. I remember when I had COVID, for example, it was light, and I was able to stay home for 14 days, reading, staying by myself. I couldn't do too much because I was quite foggy-minded. I was quite relaxed. But there are times where somehow one is happy to be sick because one gets more attention, more care, many other dynamics. If I don't think that I'm sick, if I don't think that I can get better, then I'll never put effort into the healing process. Someone who has an addiction, for example, what does the person need to do first and foremost to overcome that addiction? Needs to admit that he has this problem. What's the classic? Oh, but when I want, I can stop. That's not true. One has this illusion to be to have control over the situation. Personally, for example, I'm terrorized. I'm terrorized by being addicted to something. And a short time ago, and I've talked about this a couple times. I was home. Needed to be up very late. I have puppies at home. I have 6 puppies at home, and first that first week, we needed to keep watch on them all night long. It was very, very late. At a certain point, I picked up my phone and I went onto YouTube, and I saw this function, YouTube Shorts, and that I was able to go into a deep, deep meditative state, a deep samadhi of course I'm being, it's ironic here. 2 hours go by, if not more, and I was still there. And the worst is that the day after, as soon as there was a moment where I wasn't doing something, let's say I've had this empty moment, my impulse was to pick up my phone again and look at these YouTube shorts. And I felt that there's some kind of addiction was arising. Many of us, we have these addictions, but we don't admit them. And the first thing is we need to admit it. But there's another fundamental point, which is even need to put more energy into it. I mean, it's not enough to know that we're sick. We need to put energy into imagining the state of health. I like imagining how it was in ancient China about 3,000 years ago. It's said that doctors at the time had a function. Their function wasn't to heal patients. Their function was to maintain the health of their patients. And there were family doctors, and every doctor was responsible for a certain number of families to their health. And the families paid the doctor every month as long as they were healthy. And if they got sick, they stopped paying him. So the doctors, what would they do? So now is springtime. They would go home to home and they would tell the families what to eat. We need to do like a liver cleansing. You shouldn't do this. And when the doctor realized that someone had an unhealthy lifestyle, he would show, no, you should do this instead of that. And if the doctor didn't work on prevention, he would go hungry. And if it were like this today, I'm sure that the doctors' unions would have lobbied against many products. Okay, I'll let you all reach your own conclusions about this. But with us, what happens? Often we don't dream about this state of health. We don't even know what it is. For example, it's strange, but that it's not too easy to describe. What is a healthy mind? Because this psychology, psychiatry, does it take care of the sick part of the mind or the healthy part of the mind? No, it identifies the illnesses, and with all respect, then it looks at how to take care of these types of illnesses and imbalances. No, we need to direct ourselves towards a healthy mind, a healthy body, a healthy society. But to do this, one of the first things that we need is to be able to imagine what a healthy body looks like, what a healthy mind is, what is a healthy society, how would we want it to be, and we direct ourselves accordingly, and we set our priorities. It's a utopia, but let me just take a step backwards. The system that we live in today, is it a utopia or not? Believing that it's possible to be happy and to not suffer by way of material gain and development, that's a utopia on all levels, because at the end of the day, we believe that if I can have what I want, avoid what I don't want, and keep everything that I love, I'll be happy forever. It's a utopia. We have this illusion that if I'm able, if things, when I mean things, it can also be like if that situation was the way I wanted it, if the people acted in the way I wanted them, if so creating a so-called perfect world. By doing that, that would make me happy. That's an enormous utopia. It's an enormous illusion more than utopia. Believing in a state of health. So just seeing how, first of all, what do we mean by a healthy environment, a healthy society? Our body, for example, our body, as we get older, will degenerate. So when I talk about aging well, I'm not saying that we should stay as if we were 25 years old forever. So what does it mean to age well? What do we mean by having a healthy mind? A healthy mind, I think there are many levels, but on our level, most of us, having a healthy mind, it doesn't mean to be completely free of negative thoughts or emotions. No, it's how do I face these feelings? What do I nourish? And then there's a utopic, idealized idea, which is fundamental, as I've said, as a poet once said, this Argentinian poet, I don't remember his name, and he was asked at a university conference, what is the function of a utopia? And he answered, utopia is like the horizon. The more you walk, the farther the horizon is. What's its function is to get you to walk. What's the function of utopia? To walk towards something that goes beyond where we are. Its function is to get us to walk in a direction. Otherwise, we're just going round and round because we don't have an objective. And if I think that I can't get somewhere, I'm not even going to start. It's extremely important to have a utopia. Instead, it seems almost ignorant to follow some utopia. Instead, no. If you don't have an ideal objective, you're just going to go round and round and round yourself. And where you get there and how you get there, that's not the point. It's about how you transform yourself. So even in this lifetime, if I don't reach Buddhahood, let me ask another question that takes us to a more practical level. Let's say we have a very long life. We're able to have a long life. I remember my grandfather, who's 99. What kind of old person do I want to be? Do I want to be a kind old person, full of patience and joy, balanced, stable, aware? Or do I want to be an old person, impatient and arrogant and selfish, unaware? I think that the answer is obvious. The question, the real question is, does my lifestyle match what I want? Let me just give you any kind of example. Our brain, for example, has a characteristic that is quite particular. The more we use its functions, the more those functions are reinforced, they're more developed. The less we use these functions or characteristics, those functions, little by little, they degenerate. For example, as we go forward in our adulthood, our ability to learn, are we using it more and more or less and less? Less and less. And so at a certain point, we won't be able to learn new things, and our short-term memory will disappear because we don't use it anymore. So if I want to be an old man with an active memory, then I need to train my mind, learn new things. If I want to be a patient person, a joyous person, a satisfied person, I need to cultivate that. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. It's never too late, and it's never too early. But in front of this, the exercise I talked about before, and I invite you all, I invite you to do it. Allow yourselves to imagine, to dream, who do I want to be? How would I like to be? From inside out. Not like I want to be a doctor, I want to be inside. Who do I want to be as a person? Do I want to be patient or nervous? Do I want to be balanced, or do I lose it in any kind of situation? Do I want to be kind or aggressive? So ask ourselves these questions. We say, okay, then I need to walk in that direction. Because in the Buddhist tradition, there are many different names that are given. There's the Buddha, there's the Bodhisattva, there's the Arhat, different concepts, these states where a person is in a balanced state of being with love and satisfaction, patience, etc. And I've already seen people have asked or have thought, oh, these things are an illusion. I will never be like this. But the point isn't how I will be like this. Going back to what we said at the beginning, every interaction brings a transformation. So the question is, how am I transforming myself? The more I get angry, the more easily I will get angry. The more I criticize, the more I will complain. The more I complain, the more I will criticize, and the more dissatisfaction I will feel, and the more suffering I'll feel. The more gratitude I have, the more I thank, the more satisfaction I'll feel, and the happier I'll be. So this first fundamental step, and the term in Buddhism that is used is the term renunciation, which I think is a wrong translation, nejung in Tibetan. The translation, the more literal translation would be the would be would be definitive would be definite emergence. You're sure about getting out. It doesn't translate very well in Italian. It's understood as the certainty of being able to get out of a state of suffering, to reach a state of peace, which is translated as renunciation. But when we think of renunciation, we think about having something wonderful that we need to set aside. I think we could say we're renouncing to suffering and the causes of suffering, these dynamics that are harmful. But that first passage is more than allowing ourselves. The first step would be falling in love with peace, inner peace. We can study the philosophy a lot, we can learn many things, do a lot of meditation, but our passion has the most power. Passion, I have passion for what? That the gateway to the spiritual path is about falling in love with inner peace. You can call it falling in love with nirvana. Normally, falling in love is not the term that's used, but I think it really describes it well, because when we want something, it's not conceptual. It takes our entire being, this falling in love. When we're in love with someone, something, or ourselves even, how often do we think of that thing? Constantly, in continuation. Do we measure how much effort we put into getting that object of passion, of love? Even if it's difficult, there's joy in getting it because we're going towards something important. So we need to cultivate our passion. Maybe you've heard that desire should be eliminated. It depends on what you mean by desire. The desire should be redirected because it's the energy that pushes us in our life. So that first step is about what I want. So we create this passion within, this passion for inner peace. I want to be at peace with myself. I want to be at peace with others. I want to relate in a balanced way. I want to have love towards myself. I want to have love for others. I want to be able to interact with everyone in a way where I'm able to see the needs of others and relate to their needs. I want to have such inner stability that regardless of what happens, that nothing will take me away from that state of peace. I want to have infinite inner space. I want to interact with reality in a way that corresponds to how reality is. I can go on and on. I want to be able to direct my mind. I want I don't want to live with like my mind being an inner struggle. I want to be able to place my mind on something and my mind follows, rests on that thing. No, we want that, but it's not free, we need to pay. When we want something tremendously, we're we're open to saving up money for that. Yesterday, I gave a boy a ride, and in the car we were talking. It was really nice. It was this boy who has a great passion for dancing, and he said, um, and during the summer I work so I can put money aside so that I can go to dance school. So as to work, strange hours, it doesn't matter. His passion, he works so hard with joy because he's passionate about this. So it's this path about looking in our own eyes. So looking in the mirror, looking at our own shadows. I mean, this is not an easy job, but if there's passion, we do it with joy and with a tremendous amount of effort. So we need to cultivate this passion, allow ourselves to fall in love with this so-called inner peace. The next step is taking this passion and expand it. When it's no longer enough, inner peace is not enough for me. I want other people to feel this same level of peace. I start seeing those around me, and I say, oh, how wonderful would it be if everyone I met lived with this level of satisfaction, peace, and happiness, and gradually allow myself to desire the happiness of others the same way I desire happiness for myself. And it took me a long time to understand this, but and maybe because I wasn't able to understand it before, or the way that I first learned it wasn't very clear. But normally we have this tendency to think that the selfishness and altruism are two opposing forces. It says, oh, we have to stop being selfish to be altruistic. It's that second step in Buddhism is about developing altruism. And we say we shouldn't be selfish, we should be altruistic. How can I develop altruism? How can I develop altruism by getting rid of my selfishness if I'm selfishness? I don't think that altruism exists in opposition to selfishness. It's a better version of selfishness, we can say. This changes our perspective. Because what is selfishness in the end? It's this obsession with self-gratification, this obsession of, I want to be well, I don't want to suffer. People say, Lama, I don't think I'm selfish. I give more importance to my children than to myself. Of course, they're your children, remembering that the I and the my is an extension of the I. So this strong attraction to happiness and this strong aversion to suffering, that's selfishness. And altruism is the same thing, but in addition to wanting to be well oneself, one desires that for others. So we expand, we open up this feeling. It's not in opposition. It's not me or others. It's me and others, others and me. We're together. So the best translation that I've found for this feeling is when we're able to say, your happiness is as important to me as my own. Your suffering is as important to me as my own. Wow, that means I really love you. And when we're able to expand this and we're able to give value to the happiness and the suffering of others in the same way that we give value to ourselves. And we talk about equalizing self with others. This equanimity is the basis of the feeling that we call bodhicitta, this profound love where one takes on oneself the responsibility to act for the benefit of others, where my actions are not only for myself, but they're for everyone else. This is a fundamental quality on our passages. There are 3 passages: loving ourselves, loving others, and the third is called having a correct view of reality. Because love without wisdom generates frustration. Let's try to see this. Has it ever happened that you were upset because someone you love is not well? It happens. Have you ever tried to change someone else? Have you ever managed to change someone else? I haven't. And I don't know if here when I ask this question, it seems like a rhetorical question, and you don't answer. I'm pretty sure that no one has ever managed. I mean, no one has this power to change someone else. You can interact with someone else, and there is transformation. But actually going in and changing someone else is impossible. If I see you, and I think that your way of being is not going well because you're suffering, how many times have you seen people have certain behavior that according to the way we see things, that way generates suffering? This happens, right? Maybe we've asked ourselves, why does this person act like this? It would be better if they acted differently, or you shouldn't be like this, or you shouldn't do that. I imagine a Buddha looking at other beings. It would be a constant frustration. But here there's a concept that I personally think is extremely important, and I'll try to explain it in a simple way. There are 2 metaphors I can give you. The first is of an equation. If we all choose a number, there are many of us present, and we don't have the time to actually do it, and we don't even need to do it. But just imagine choosing a number, and then together with the number, choose if you want to add it, to subtract it, multiply it, or divide it. And then together we compose this enormous equation. And let's say at the very end of this equation we get to the number 21. And there's the number is 21. And then someone says, no, I want to change my number. Or someone says, no, I want it to be 52. But regardless of whether I'm happy with the result of this equation, is this result is it perfect, or was it just a random answer? Oh no, it's not perfect because I wanted it to be 52. I wanted the result to be 52, even though I like 21 as an answer. If I want the result to be 52, what can I do? I can't go back and change. I can't change the numbers given. No, I need to give continuity to the equation so that it goes towards the number that I want. I can add, I can subtract. And someone could say, but if I had put in a different number, then the result would have been different. Of course, but that you gave another number, and that number that you gave this result of 21. When a leaf falls from a tree, the position of the fallen leaf is like an equation. It's the result. It's the result of the wind, the atmospheric pressure, the car that went by, the children that were playing ball underneath the tree, the insect that was chewing on the stem of the leaf, the bark of the tree, etc., etc., etc. We can spend decades of all the different aspects that add up, that bring the result of that leaf falling in that position. And even if we want that leaf to have fallen somewhere else, it doesn't mean that it didn't fall in the perfect place. And when I say perfect, it doesn't mean that it's the best place. It just means that given this complex interaction of causes and conditions, that complex interaction of causes and conditions brought it to fall there. Now let's think about someone who's acting in a way that you don't like, someone that you know directly, or maybe even a historical figure or political figure. Normally these poor politicians are always the target. So think about someone. Think of someone. Put that person in front of you. And allow yourselves, this person in this present moment, what he does, his complexity. Is this person perfect, or is his behavior, his being just totally random? I know it's difficult to say it. This person is perfect. It's not perfect in his own way. No, it's perfect in the sense that given the causes and conditions, this person could only be like this. It's like saying, if I were you, I would do differently. Okay, if I were you, but with your body, your past, your experience, your DNA, your education, your knowledge, your mentality, your social cultural upbringing, if I were you, how much differently would I have done? I would not. And once I talked about this, once I talked about this in Brazil, and there was someone, the next day I was in a restaurant, and this person, I was at a restaurant the day after this conference, and somebody was there, and this person came to me and said, "Oh, thank you, you explained so perfectly that free will doesn't exist." And I said, "What? No, free will exists. But in this present moment, I mean, we can decide, we can choose, go, not go, say, not say. We have a little bit, a very small amount of freedom, but we have that. But in this present moment that has already manifested, can't be different. Can't be different. It's a long process, a very complex interaction. If someone had chosen a different number, then our result would not have been 21. But the equation is perfect. And each one of us, in our present moment, we are a result of a very complex equation. And what's interesting is that this very complex equation, any number that we add, that we subtract, that we multiply, any number we add, that is going to change my result. If I take that number result, we've all put in a number. Who's the guilty one? You know, so whose fault is it that the number is 21? Is there one person that that we can attribute the fault? No, it's the whole that brought the result of 21. And so is the result of each one of us. I see you, that you behave in a way that I see you with attitudes that I don't like, with behavior that I don't agree with. But when I see you and your behavior that I don't agree with, and if I acknowledge that you are perfect, what can I do? I can choose how I interact with you, adapting to your reality, so that your result, your equation, goes into a more positive direction, according to me. The essence of all of this is an attitude that I think is extremely healthy, which is about accepting the present, this present moment, whether it's our own present moment or someone else's behavior or the social, economic, political present. We accept this present moment. We don't go against it. We don't go against it, but at the same time we direct ourselves to the future we want. I don't oppose you, but I choose to interact with you so that, according to how I see things, I interact to bring a positive interaction. So I don't oppose the present, but I direct myself to the future. Because opposing the present, or opposing something, is what does that mean? It means victimizing ourselves. It means complaining. And if there's something that is incredibly counterproductive, it's victimizing ourselves. Yes, it's true that, I know I shouldn't have done this, but if you knew what happened to me, okay, no, this thing happened, so now what do we do? Now where do we go? Because here's the key. So we accept the present moment. Things are the way they are, like a very, very complex equation, as we said. But we need to remember with great clarity that every moment, every word that we say, every choice that we make, every interaction that we have, every thought that we have, all of that those are all parts of this equation, and the equation in our lives and in the lives of others, because our equation is made up of two things. Cause and conditions, they're called. The causes are things that we have done, our choices, and the conditions are the choices that others have made, that we interact with. So also our actions are conditions for them. I can't change you, but I can be a condition. I can be a positive condition to help you change. So going back to what we said at the beginning, wherever there's interaction, inevitably there's transformation. So constantly I'm transforming, and I can choose the direction I want to go. And in the Buddhist practice, there are three main tools, methods to transform ourselves into this utopic idea of inner peace. The three tools are called Tawa, Chupa, and Gompa in Tibetan. It's really the summary of it all. It is Tawa is the view, behavior, conduct is Chupa, and then the techniques of familiarization, Gom. Let's start with the first one. When people say, I'd like to get close to Buddhism, what should I do? Here, these three things. And it's done gradually. I mean, we all have different minds. It's not that one thing is good for everyone. And here, who cares about being Buddhist? It's not about being Buddhist. Someone says, oh, I'm sorry, Lama, I'm not Buddhist. No, you're not doing anything wrong by not being Buddhist. Yeah. It'd be much worse to call yourself a Buddhist and to act incoherently to the Buddhist principles. It's not important to me to be Buddhist. It's important to act in a way that transforms us into a more virtuous being. So the Tawa is view. The view has to do with studying, listening, reading, learning aspects that help us have a view of the world that is more and more coherent. Today we talked about projecting our happiness onto the external world or onto how we see things inside. We talked about the external environment, inner environment, what determines one or the other. This is part of the view on how we shape our understanding of our reality, and it's fundamental because our actions are based on our view. So the objective is not a cognitive change, but a paradigm change. So we start from the idea that we all live within our own paradigm. So I repeat, we study philosophy, we read, we learn, we talk about, and in the view, again, the view is also made up of three parts. We have to listen, which is about acquiring information, understand, which is digesting that information. So it's no longer a repetition of what someone else said, but it becomes our own. And then we familiarize ourselves with that concept until it becomes part of our own being. And it's really part of our paradigm without having to think about it. So we listen, we understand, and we familiarize. And this is all part of the view. For example, impermanence. So reality appears to us as being permanent when instead it's impermanent in constant transformation. And now let's not get into details, but it's something quite obvious. You don't need a degree in philosophy to understand this. But it's something that even if we know, it takes time to really integrate it into our lives. So we need to listen, to understand, familiarize ourselves with this concept of impermanence or interdependence, or what are the causes, the causes of happiness, the causes of sufferings. What is happiness? There are so many aspects that we can look at. So one important aspect is the view, but that's not enough. Together with the view, other important part of the practice, another important tool given to us, is our conduct. Conduct is the way I interact with the world in my daily life, the way I express myself, the things I say, the actions I do, my lifestyle, the way I eat, the way I speak, the way I interact. And here there are vows that can be taken to support there can be vows to support virtuous activities and to help us avoid non-virtuous activities that generate suffering. For example, don't kill, don't lie, um, don't take substances that take away the clarity of the mind. Um, they're the five main vows. It's not about what a Buddhist can and cannot do. If a person follows Buddhist teachings and chooses to take that vow, then that person should not do that thing. But it's not that, oh, you're Buddhist and now from now on you can't do these things. It's always about choosing. It's not about you. It's not that you can lie or you cannot lie. It's that the lying brings harm. And once I realize that a certain conduct brings suffering, I want to avoid that action. So these five main vows, like don't steal, don't lie, don't kill, don't have a wrong sexual conduct. So wrong sexual or to having sexual misconduct. There are two aspects here that should be avoided that generate suffering. A behavior where one doesn't respect commitments, prior commitments. So if you have a commitment with someone else and you don't respect that commitment, that would be wrong. That would be sexual misconduct. Or even within, so that would be like cheating. But even if there's no cheating, but if the other is not taken into consideration, if the other is lived only as a tool for one's own pleasure, that is also wrong. That's sexual misconduct. That's what we would consider today. And the other aspect, someone gave me a description talking about the lack of consideration for the dignity of your object of desire. So I see you as an object of desire to satisfy my own needs, and I don't take into consideration your needs or your whether you want to, whether you don't want to. And this is, today we can see that is a more subtle and more subtle description of what would we consider abuse. And then the last one is to not lose control of one's own mind, because we have our impulses of desire and aversion. There's some times where maybe one wants to steal, or maybe you want to spit in someone's face, or do things that we know are not beneficial, but we're able to control ourselves. We don't lose control ourselves, but if we lose that control, then we lose control, then the probability of doing stupid things would be greatly increased. And so that's why it said using alcohol and drugs should be avoided. I remember talking to um, um, someone who stopped drinking, and this person came to me and said, I just spent 1 week without drinking, and I am so I don't have this mental fogginess anymore. I thought that mental fogginess was absolutely normal. So the most precious resource we have is our mind. So our take drinking or drugs that would take away our mental clarity should be avoided. So, but we need just to choose what are the things that are beneficial to me that I want to cultivate, and what are the things that create suffering that I want to avoid. So the conduct has to do with our lifestyle. And that third part of the path is the hardest, less natural, let's say. Gompa in Tibetan, translated sometimes as meditation, but I prefer the translation familiarization. For example, let's say that I want to follow a diet. How many here have started a diet and at a certain point you haven't been able to continue? What's how do so how can we adapt this all to going on to following a certain diet? So first I need the part of the view. I need to understand conceptually the diet, what I should eat, what I should avoid, etc. The second passage is conduct. I need to apply. I need to actually follow this diet. Respect certain times of the day, or the foods, of course, and how they're cooked. And the third passage, let's say at a certain point there's a holiday, the family reunion, or you go to your grandmother's house, your auntie's house, and there normally there's a delicious dish she makes, but that I shouldn't eat. And not only is that delicious dish there, but there's there's the pressure, this kind of like emotional blackmail. You see, I cooked this for you with so much love, and if you don't eat it, I mean, what? Just eating it once is not going to hurt you. Just do it for me here and there. And you're going against family tradition. We've always eaten this, you know. No one has ever died from eating a good parmigiana. So there's the whole story about the family. But and then you try to explain why I can't eat lactose. And no, the probability of maintaining your diet on that day is very low. And so what do? I prepare myself before. I haven't experienced that situation yet, but I imagine it. I do an analytical process where I go over the benefits of my diet, the negative effects of not following the diet, why I'm actually going on this diet, until I have this feeling inside that that certifies the importance of this diet and my commitment to the diet. And then after that conclusion, I put that conclusion aside, and then I allow myself to imagine lunch at my auntie's house, and I imagine the whole scenario in imagination, and that desire to eat that dish comes out, and the mind that says, oh, just that one time is enough. But we all know that just doing something once means doing it for 3 months at least. And then I apply that conclusion, and I find myself in meditation, in imagination, I'm able to not eat the dish, not hurt my auntie. So when you're able to imagine, to in imagination, you're when you're able to imagine that situation, and in meditation to successfully maintain your vows, and you repeat that again and again and again, then certainly when faced actually with that situation, you will be successful. Now let's apply this to emotions like aggression or jealousy, etc. So I know cognitively, I know that I shouldn't react with aggression, but I also know that there are certain situations that are stronger than this understanding of not reacting with aggression. So I try in imagination, in visualization, to act differently. I familiarize myself with acting differently. So I familiarize myself with a state of love and balance and satisfaction, respect, gratitude and patience. I familiarize myself with what doesn't come spontaneously, naturally. And by doing that, gradually I'm able to develop that. That's that third step of familiarization. And here we can talk about the various techniques of meditation, concentration, sacred art. This is all to create familiarity with what doesn't come spontaneously so that it can come naturally. So these are the 3 steps, the fundamental steps. Is that clear? And someone might ask, but I like the philosophy, but not the mantra recitation or pujas, or others say, I like these so-called mystical aspects, and the philosophy just it just stresses me. And what's wonderful is that there's not one road for everyone. There are many, many different ways, methods. Someone has more predisposition for philosophy, or others who have more attraction, more predisposition for the so-called mystical aspects of Buddhism. And that's wonderful. It's fine. Everyone needs somehow to use the means that are most suitable to their own habits, their own mind. And when sometimes people ask me, where shall I start? Of course, there's some. Of course, we have the 3. We have the 6 dharmas of preparation. We have marvelous techniques like self-healing. There are the 3 principal aspects, three principal aspects of the path, the 4 seals of Buddhism, the 4 noble truths, the mind training. It's very, very rich. There's a Tibetan proverb that says, every country it has a different dialect. Every master has a different method. Because since the time of Buddha Shakyamuni, he never wanted to leave anything written. I don't know what Buddha Shakyamuni wanted, but what we see is that he did not have anything written. Is it because he didn't know how to write? At his time, there was scriptures. He had the best education possible. And even if he didn't know how to write, would he not have found someone who could have written for him? The first Buddhist text came about 300 years after his death. I think it's also Jesus, I think they said it was about 300 years after his death. I don't know much about the Christian tradition, but in the Buddhist tradition, what happened is Buddha didn't leave anything written. And if we ask ourselves why, well, it's said that Buddha said, I will be present to those who want to follow the path that I've left. I will be present. I will be present in those who guide this path. And one of the responsibilities of those who lead on this path is to adapt themselves to the mentality of those who want to follow. So if we look back, 2000, we don't need to go back to the time of Buddha, 2,500 years ago, even just 20 years ago in Tibet. In Tibet is completely different than our mentality. If I were to teach today the way I learned, I don't know if there would be 5 people left in this room. First, you need to memorize everything, and then little by little you start understanding. Little by little you start putting the puzzle pieces together. And it takes years. Marvelous. It's marvelous when you're able to do it. But the way we study, the way we want to learn is completely different. So Buddha was clear that the masters need to adapt themselves. And what's wonderful is that over the centuries, many different masters created methods that adapted methods and tools that adapt to their disciples, manifestations of the same thing. And this is wonderful because we're different and we need different approaches. So there's not one tradition that is the best. There's not one technique that is the best. There are many techniques, many traditions that are the best for each one. It's not the best. It's the best for me. Which doesn't mean there is no. We can't say there is the best tradition or the best tool. No, we're different. We need to see what is most suitable for us. If there's a painting, and Lama Genshin really he really loved it. If you look on the other side, you see the 4 windows. Between the fenesters on each side, there's these main images, and then many. Here you see Nagarjuna, and then on that side you have Lama Tsongkhapa Paratisha, and then here you have Nagarjuna with a blue shirt with snakes behind his back. These are the 84 Mahasiddhas. The 84 Mahasiddhas were practitioners in antique India, ancient India, who were able to reach their objective of nirvana, so-called inner peace, adapting the path to the life that they were leading. Among them, there was a prostitute, or a barman, or there was someone who was a weaver. You can see that first image on the left, just under the main image, you can see the weaver. There was everything. The first one up top on the right with the sword, that should be Lakshminkara. Lakshminkara was a princess from Sri Lanka who wanted to follow the spiritual life, found a master, but in her social caste system, she was supposed to get married, but she refused. She wanted to meditate, and so she pretended to be crazy. she got naked. She was in the middle of the village and she was screaming. Then went into a cave, and that allowed her to gain her freedom. And she became a very important master. There are people with very different stories. The stories, the stories of their lives are very, very different. So Maha means great, and Siddha is a realized being. So Lama Gangchen really, really cared about them. The message to us was that we need to adapt our path to the life that we have. There's no perfect method, and the others are wrong. There's our ability to adapt and to find what is best for us. And let's remember that the path, it needs to be applied to every aspect of our lives. In every moment, it's not something that we live the spiritual part of our life when we're meditating or when the temple also. But in every place, in every context that we find ourselves, someone might say, well, that's really tiring. So if I say this, I mean, living is tiresome. Not in the sense that I don't want to live, but in life we need to work hard for anything. Studying, it takes effort, yes. Looking for a job, working. A relationship with someone else, a relationship within a couple, that takes energy. Getting old, dying, I imagine, but we need to put energy in our life, and that's not the problem. The problem is where I'm going, what direction am I going into, and what's beautiful. What is so beautiful is that the direction I go doesn't depend on what I do, but how I live what I do. Sometimes people say, I want to follow Buddhism, but I can't follow the monastic path, but can I still practice? Of course. If it were just about becoming following a monastic way of life, then that would be the easiest way. Instead, there are people who can spend their entire lives in a monastery and be more worldly than anyone in the middle of the city. So we adapt ourselves to the reality that we find ourselves in. At home with our family, at work, as we study, is here where we need to train in patience, gratitude, and respect, and in kindness, love, into harmony and coherence with reality in our behavior. Just to close what I said before, at a certain point, Buddha's disciples, about 300 years after his death, they started seeing. These were oral traditions, and up to that point, the people would get together and would say, once Buddha was in this place with these people, and this was said, and this person asked this question, and Buddha answered in this way. And those who had heard those stories, they would repeat them. And that's how it was for 300 years. But at a certain point, what happened is that the version that I know is different from the one that you are telling. And so there were some versions of the same story that weren't matching. And so they decided it was better to write it all down, because they were starting to not trust the memory from the oral tradition. So that's where the sutras came about. So people ask me, what's the quote-unquote Bible of Buddhism? And then it's about 250 volumes of texts. If we were to take all of these volumes, each tradition has chosen a main text. In our Mahayana tradition from Tibet is the Sutra of the Perfection of Wisdom, the Prajnaparamita, and then there's a version in there's the version in 18,000 verses, in 8,000 verses, 10,000 verses, and then there's the extremely brief version called the Heart Sutra. And then there are all the commentaries of these texts from originally in India and then in Tibet, and then also more modern masters. I mean, why are there so many texts? Wouldn't it have been easier if Buddha had written just one book? Because we're different. We need different approaches. There are those who will follow the path through one teaching. Maybe someone will use a different one, and that's absolutely wonderful. It's fine. And getting back to our starting point, I invite you to fall in love. And there are two ways of falling in love. You can fall in love at first sight. That passion just spontaneously arises. Being careful that it's not just that it's not a fire made of hay. We need a long fire, strong fire. And then there's also the way of those of us who need to try and to go slowly, but we're not falling in love with Buddhism. Buddhism is a tool, like there are many. We have to fall in love with our objective of inner peace. With an attitude of trust, of faith, and with tremendous and acceptance. So, before we were talking about finding someone that we had aversion towards and thinking you are perfect. Now look at yourself in the mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror and say and accept yourself. You are perfect. Which doesn't mean accepting. It doesn't mean that everything that you are is in the right way. It just you want to be different, but without going against ourselves, without guilt, without blame. We direct ourselves towards how we want to be. Give ourselves the right direction, and this direction and then manifests itself in the view and the conduct, and when we strengthen it by familiarizing itself, and gradually, little by little, we transform. And someone might say, oh, this is a very long process. What alternative do you have? Do we have an alternative to transform or to not transform? No, so it's better to transform with awareness in the direction that we want. This is a little bit of what I wanted to share with you today. Today after lunch, we will have a ceremony to formalize what we call refuge. I'm not going to explain it now, but it's something that for a long time was done privately, but then for logistics and for lack of time, there were many people who were asking to take refuge, and then they needed to wait a very long time. And then I decided to use this magical thing called the my calendar. And so when we put it now in our program, so those who want to start this, to follow this path, this is a very important passage. Those of you who want to formalize this commitment you have, it's wonderful. Instead of you're just curious, you're not sure, I mean, you're welcome to come. You can participate, but the actual taking of refuge is personal. It's personal, and it's taken by those who have been following Buddhism for a certain time, a certain level of awareness and commitment. Very, very important. So this this afternoon is something separate from this morning. It's not a continuity. It's not a continuation of this morning's teachings. I like to I'd like to also take advantage of to publish something. We have a very good opportunity. It's wonderful everything that we've said, but on a very practical level, our lifestyle it really determines what we do and how and how we are. And our great friend, he was here earlier. Is our Dr. Rohir. He's someone who met Lama Ganchen many, many years ago. And I like to see these people who have a very scientific point of view. He's a doctor, he's a psychiatrist. But he's also able at the same time with the Dharma. So with the scientific point of view, I have to try this. I want to see if it works. And he was able to take parts of the teaching, things that he has tried himself. He's applied them to his life. And in Holland, inside the hospital where he works, he's been able to apply tools such as meditation and yoga with a very scientific point of view, but this area of this area of complementary medicine. So there's a very detailed scientific protocol, and today there are more than 1,500 patients that are being followed by this protocol with the complementary medicine. And sometimes we have this expression that the saint at home is the one who doesn't make miracles, but it's important, very important for us to really take advantage of those who are part of our Sangha. And so Rohir will give a conference this evening at 6 o'clock. So he'll actually talk about very, very, very practical aspects, showing how to have a healthy mind, a healthy body. You need to have a healthy lifestyle. So he'll have his conference this evening. It's our time for our dedications.
Ralme cheki pela longche chi sada lamge yunte rabzone dorje changi kopan yurtobe sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan dele kshin sen takto delekpe kuncho sumki chingi lob kuncho sumki ngodrubo tsol kuncho sumki trashisho.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to obtain all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Buon appetito.
Have a good lunch, and we will come back at 3:30 for the taking of refuge.